I'm not even just saying this. I'm serious about this. I think his corner would have let him die. Think about it, dude. At what point in time, was he even remotely defending himself?
No, he wasn't.
Welcome to Casual Academy MMA. Join us as we dive deep into mixed martial arts history for every UFC, WEC, Pride, and Strikeforce event. We'll examine the fights and fighters of the past, reviewing the eras, techniques, and revolutions that made our beloved sport the phenomenon it is today. Without further ado, let's watch the fights.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Casual Academy. My name is Nathan Karimi, and I'm joined, as always, by my cousin and co-host.
What's up, guys? I'm Kevin Zimbelman.
Tonight, we hopped in the MMA time machine for UFC 7.5, December 16th, 1995 in Denver, Colorado for the Ultimate.
In the ultimate, are you ready? Let's open up the gate.
Bad name.
Terrible
Bad name. Why the ultimate is just the best.
The corny, the corniness of the 90s prevails.
Right.
So if you guys joined us last time in the brawl in Buffalo, you will remember that Marco Hua, the unknown age fighter from Brazil, undefeated in Vale Tudo in Brazil, defeated the polar bear, the giant Paul Verlins by basically TKO, right? Buckled leg kicks.
Yeah, that's right.
What big takeaways from tonight?
Big takeaways. Shout out Night Hunter, the first movie.
Yeah.
No, for real though. The big takeaways. Fish hooking is now illegal. That's kind of interesting. They're starting to implement a little more rules here. And this is also the first time there was decisions.
Yep. And judges.
That's right. Yeah, and judges. Other than that, big takeaways.
15-minute, one-round fights.
Yeah.
Which was not that necessarily that way before. My big kind of takeaway from the night was I 100% understand how they tried to make this illegal at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because the two main fights, I forgot if we reveal who won, but the two main fights were just disgusting mismatches of like just a giant versus normal sized people and just not.
When it's that one-sided, they need to have the common sense to just like stop it.
Stop the fight.
I don't understand what's the point of watching somebody get like fucked up for 30 minutes straight. You know, has there ever been like a miraculous comeback we've seen so far? And I don't think there has. And I guess that's people's like intentions of not stopping these fights because they're like, yo, anything can happen. But so far, none of that has happened.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Nothing jumps out. Maybe like some guillotine victories. You know, some of Royce's wins at the last minute felt like comebacks.
Yeah.
Dude, one thing, the referee still feels semi-irrelevant.
There is no. Oh, John? That's it?
Yeah, Big John. Big John, just every once in a while you hear him go, keep on working.
Dude, I mean, who is it had the guillotine like pretty cinched in and he stopped it?
Probably.
It was Oleg, right? Oleg on
Hua.
Marco. Yeah, Marco Hua.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, you want to get into
let's get straight into the fights.
Fight number one, we have our boy Tank Abbott versus Steve Jenham, the biggest fluke champion of UFC history so far.
Yeah, he was UFC 3 champion, was it?
Yeah, after coming in as a reserve or whatever.
A reserve, and ridiculous. He was getting booed the fuck.
Yeah. I mean, everybody loves Tank Abbott. Tank Abbott is a pit fighter, 6 foot, 250 pounds, 30 years old. Jenham is a ninjutsu fighter, 5'10", 195 pounds, 32 years old. It was the strangest submission. Tank submits him with a neck crank with his own head.
Yeah. So just to kind of set up the whole fight, Tank basically, they come to the center. Tank throws just a hard kind of right fucking straight / overhand. Steve Jenham rolls with it. Tank gets him to the ground, gets him up against the fence. And Steve Jenham's showing like a little jiu-jitsu there. He kicks Tank in the face from the ground. He kind of spins out, recovers guard. Somehow Tank winds up on top of him. Next thing you know, and it at one point, dude, if you watch all the way through the finish, it fucking is brutal looking. Tank is essentially running the top of his head into Steve Jenham's face and pushing it with everything he's got into the fence. Steve Jenham's face looks like it's about to fall off his body.
Yeah, dude, his chin was like touching his shoulder. Like, it was like, it was brutal.
God, and Tank's just got that bulldozer of a head. Tank wins this thing he's not tired at all.
With ease. I mean, within like 2 minutes.
Yeah. So first fight, Tank Abbott. We called it a neck crank. I don't know what the fuck they called it back then, but Tank Abbott wins, defeats the former champion Steve Jenham with a neck crank. Not to say that it was a total mismatch, but I think even if this stayed on the feet, I think Tank knocks him out. I think Tank is the better fighter here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we got for fight number 2?
Fight number 2, we have Paul Valerians versus Dan the Beast Severn. Paul is a freestyle fighter, 6'8", 300 pounds, 25 years old. Dan is Greco-Roman wrestling?
So, yeah, I think so.
6'2", 250 pounds, 37 years old. When I heard 37 years old, I thought, I don't know. I don't know if Dan's really going to return to form. I thought it was going to be...
He's 3 months older than he was last time. What are you talking about?
I don't know. You just hear 37 and you're just like...
old,
But also, 37 for heavyweights isn't too bad, you know?
Yeah, and 37 with that mustache and like he's a
Regardless, Dan couldn't have made it look easier if he tried. I mean, it got the takedown, immediately went into side control, and got the first arm triangle in the UFC. So shout out to him for that.
Dude, it's funny because there's this, we keep saying, Dan's bigger than everybody.
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven's is bigger than everyone. And if there's one thing we remember from Paul Verhoeven's before is Paul Verhoeven's has heart. There was not really a lot to this fight, but it does settle the fact that Dan is not just the biggest guy.
True.
Because he took out the biggest guy.
He did. With ease.
Not much here. Not necessarily a memorable fight. Maybe a little highlight reel for Dan. Next fight?
Yeah. Fight number 3, Dave Benetow versus Oleg Taktarov. Dave is a wrestling practitioner, 6'2", 235 pounds, 28 years old. Oleg is the UFC 6 champion, 27 years old, 6 foot, 225 pounds. Sambo is his fighting style. I'm trying to think how this one really went. I know Oleg got that heel hook at the end.
So basically, a couple things. First of all, Oleg Taktarov is now a staple of the UFC.
Yeah, agreed.
He was the champion at one point in time. He fought Ken Shamrock to a draw, which he definitely lost, but there was no judges back then. So he's here to stay in the UFC. He's pretty good. He's a Sambo fighter. This fight, they basically circled, met in the middle, grappled for a little bit. Oleg drops down.
Oh, he went for that a lot in this whole event. Yeah, he
drops down for the heel hook, ankle lock. I don't know exactly. Gets it. There was a little bit of fighting back and forth on the ground for maybe 25 seconds max, and then Oleg gets it. Pretty easy victory. He moves on to the semifinals.
Yeah. He went for that dropping like heel hook every single fight of his.
Yeah.
It was like his new signature.
Yeah,
right?
it big time was. Sometimes more creatively than others, but this one was pretty easy. It almost seems like Oleg is going to beat anyone who's not, he's like kind of a modern day gatekeeper, Fight
number 4, the last quarterfinal match, we have Keith Hackney versus Marco Huas. Keith is a white tiger karate expert, 37 years old, 5'11". He literally looks like he could be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's long-lost dad. Huas is a Vale Tudo practitioner, reigning UFC champion.
Yep.
He just won UFC 7. 4-time Brazilian Muay Thai champion, 6'1", undisclosed age, which is so bad.
We kind of guessed somewhere around 40.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
218 pounds. This one I thought was really interesting because about 30 seconds in, I was like, we're going to get a stand-up battle for the first time. But it was a little even on the feet. But as soon as Huas initiated the grappling, quickly got Keith Hackney's back, dragged him down,
Yep.
flattened him out, and just dropped bombs.
Yeah. Nothing. This fight was, I agree, like I thought for a minute it was going to be more of a striking affair. Huas, honestly, he's the only like thorough leg kicker.
Yeah.
Was kicking Keith Hackney's, which Keith Hackney's another like semi-staple of the UFC. I can't remember a single one of his fights. He's not like that memorable, but he's got that look. He's definitely got some tenacity. Keith Hackney throws like a wild overhand right. That's when Huas ducks under, gets his back standing up, drags him down, hooks in, rolls him to his stomach, flattens him out, drops bombs, and it's pretty much, like you said, over.
The most impressive performance, in my opinion, up to this point.
All UFCs or tonight?
No, tonight.
For
At this
sure.
point, I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, Huas, he's that guy.
Dude, it was definitely the most like holistic, like a little bit of striking, closed the distance, got the back, took him down, ground and pound from the back control. Yeah, Huas looked like the champion.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because it's like, you know, you think about like, I don't know, you think about like a Islam Makhachev versus like, who would that be the equivalent of? Like a top 37, maybe a top 45 guy. It's like, what would he do to fucking, I don't know.
Bobby Green.
What did he do to Bobby Green?
No, man, literally.
That's probably a pretty
Yeah.
good equivalent. Yeah. That's almost, you know what? Almost, and I wonder if Islam watched tape on this fight for that.
No, but honestly, this was like the most modern look to the UFC, right? Because the back take, the drag, like,
Yeah.
all that.
And it still was not modern because the striking was dog shit.
Agreed.
It was there. They
Right.
circled, but it was dog shit.
Yeah, we've still not seen like a really good striking match yet. And I wonder what's the first one we're going to get.
To this day, I would say that Bryce Mitchell's homeboy, Gerard Jurdeau, was the... I'm just kidding. I would say to this day, Gerard Jurdeau is still the most impressive striker.
Yeah, I'd say so. Or Huas with the leg kicks.
But
no.
Those just look good because other people
no
don't know
one's
what they're
not
doing.
Yeah, you're right.
No,
You're right,
it's
you're right.
I think it's Gerard Jurdeau, and quite frankly, I think number 2 is our boy fucking the Blob.
Oh, the Blob was the man, dude.
Yeah.
Kevin Rozier.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to the semifinals. The first fight was Tank Abbott versus Dan Severn. And,
Oh yeah.
dude, I was hyped for this fight.
yeah.
I don't know about you, but
yeah.
I was so hyped
Yeah.
for this fight. Nothing burger, bro. This was a nothing. I mean, Dan just did whatever the fuck he wanted to
Yes.
Tank for what, 15 minutes straight?
Yeah. The closest thing I've ever witnessed to
You can't say that.
I just
You
did.
can't say that.
Luckily, I'm blessed to have never witnessed. I did. I would call the police immediately. But I imagine this is about as close as it gets. This was fucking terrible.
It was, the most one-sided fight
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I mean, I don't know. You know what I want to know is in the comments if you guys put like, what is the most one-sided fight of all time? What is the most one-sided fight of all time? Rack your brain, think about it. Let's stick to the UFC because we haven't entered Pride yet. What is the most one-sided fight of all time? Put it in the comments. If you saw this fight, you may comment this. Most people probably don't remember this for shit. I challenge you, after you put the most one-sided fight you've ever seen, go watch this, and this will be the new most one-sided fight you've ever seen.
I mean, 10 minutes straight of Tank doing
10?
nothing.
Because they stood it up at one point, or what?
I think
Or
so,
no,
right?
Tank got up.
They stood it up with... Oh, no, Tank stood up.
Tank stood up.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, though. I will say, this fight started off promising because Tank came out... First of all, Tank looked like he lost about 3 pounds. Which he said he was going to work on his cardio. Stupidly, this was still in Denver, Colorado. Dan Severn shoots on Tank, and Tank sprawls like a fucking all-American psycho.
He was ready.
He was
until he
ready
wasn't.
for the very first shot.
Yeah, exactly.
And for nothing else after that. Because He basically, I mean, Dan was on his back dropping knees. At one point in time, Dan is grabbing the fence, using it for leverage, and just dropping knees from outer space onto Tank's head, onto Tank's shoulders, onto Tank's arms, onto Tank's side.
12 to 6 elbows to the back of the head and the neck repeatedly.
Yeah. 12. Oh, God, dude. This was, and you know what's funny? During this entire thing, Tank never looked like even remotely disturbed.
He stood up and it looked like he didn't even been into a fight.
Outside the fact, it looked like he just ran up the stairs too fast.
Yeah, literally.
Outside of the fact that he was exhausted. And then, I mean, just brutal, horrendous beatdown. Probably the only fight John McCain saw before making his decision. And then Tank stands up at the very end. Somehow gets. Oh, remember Tank was holding on to the. Tank
2 hands
was holding
on the cage.
onto the cage for dear life, throwing elbows back at Dan. Nothing doing. Didn't do anything. Too little, too late. But in the last literally 10 seconds, either Dan got up. I think Dan got up and Tank chased him, and I don't want to say was swinging for the fences, but let's just say swung for the fences once, fell, and the fight was over.
Yeah. Shout out to that fight, though, being the first decision in UFC history.
Yeah, that we saw, unless there were prelim decisions.
Oh, true.
Because they keep fucking skipping us out on the prelims, which we're going to do an episode. This is what we decided, as in me right now. So I'm proposing this to Kevin and announcing it. We're going to go back and do a prelim special.
That's a good idea. And just do like the best prelim or something, or the best couple prelims.
Yeah, and we'll say, hey, these were, because somehow the prelims are the ones where you see dudes doing triple backflips and spinning and knocking dudes' fucking heads off, right?
Yeah. The highlights are crazy.
Yeah, so this one, dude.
But for the decision, it was funny because they just hold up the name of the fighter.
And there's the decision. It's unanimous for Severn.
Yeah, so one side beat down by Dan Severn, unanimous decision. And what do we got next?
The next fight for the second semifinal is Oleg Taktarov versus Marco Huas.
Yeah.
I got a lot for this one, actually. I have open fighting. Hua lands some kicks. He stuffed Oleg's takedown.
Yeah.
Remember Oleg threw that teep, and we thought he hyperextended his knee.
Oh, yeah.
And then at some point, Oleg pulls that knee bar again.
But after he throws it on the leg that he planted on to throw, it looks like he rocked his knee back into its socket or something.
It looked bad. I
did.
thought it was going to be stopped, and then he just charged him on that knee.
Oh yeah,
it was interesting.
Oleg is the one thing you can say about Oleg is this motherfucker has no quit in him.
Not at all. I'd say biggest dog in the UFC. No, but this fight was kind of quote controversial because
plain and simple,
I thought Huas won.
I thought Oleg won,
but all the judges sided with Oleg,
and then so did. And I see why you thought Oleg. I see why you think Huas won. Huas stuffed a bunch of takedowns,
right?
Stopped a few submissions.
Yeah.
Stopped a few submissions. And was landing some pretty good leg kicks. On my side of the equation, I feel like Oleg was the aggressor. Cannot deny that. Oleg was the one throwing the few punches that were thrown were from Oleg. Oleg dropped down for the heel hook, went for multiple submissions, even had a guillotine what felt like locked in at one point.
Which is so interesting because Ken said on the commentating, he was or on his little interview, he was like, oh, you give that 2 points to Oleg. The way I see it is if you don't get that submission, you don't get I don't know, maybe that could be my bias to newer UFC rules, but
yeah.
You don't get points for trying to sink in a submission, in my opinion.
I feel like if it's a half-ass attempt, you might not. But if you're close,
But he didn't get it.
Bring it to the modern UFC. What if the bell rang? What if he had him in that guillotine and the bell rang?
It's just damage.
He was in that guillotine for fucking 7.5 minutes, it felt like.
Right.
Big John stood the fight up, so...
stupidly stood the fight up when it was he was work when Oleg had a pretty good guillotine in and he stood the fight up. But anyway, Oleg wins the unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And now I guess you could say he's the reigning champion because he beat the former champion.
And he had the belt being held up behind him in the next fight. And
Yeah.
he's also didn't he win once too?
Yeah, he's the UFC 6 champion. Oh, he beat Tank Abbott, dude.
For the fine. Oh, right. So Oleg Taktarov was the former champion of UFC 6, beating Tank Abbott with the guillotine at the last second. You know, it's funny because of all the guys that are kind of evolving and bringing like a style or a method of victory to the game, Oleg seems to be the guy that's like trying shit. He was trying heel hooks. He was the guillotine killer in the last one.
I was about to say that. He switched from the guillotine being his thing to now the heel hook.
Which I'm assuming that he thought these wrestlers studied the guillotine, which they probably did because it's, you know, hopefully an easy thing to defend. You just, instead of having your head on the outside, you bring it down the middle.
Right.
Get to the final.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the final I thought was a little weird because, well, the final of the fight is Dan Severn versus Oleg Taktarov, right? They both were in like long-winded fights.
Oh, right.
The thing is, there was no like super fight in between.
There was an interview with Ken Shamrock for about 7 minutes. Was the only in
if
between.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, so then you have Dan who went this like, there was 15 minutes for both these fights, right? It felt longer.
Was
But
it?
I guess it was
Wait,
15.
Was it only 15? Yeah.
Unless they did that sudden death. Or
No,
was,
they
no,
didn't do the
that's
sudden
only
death.
in the final.
Weren't they 20? No, they were 20.
They were 20? Okay.
20 for the
So you have Dan going
semifinals.
20 minutes, and then you have Oleg going 20 minutes. The problem is Dan had 20 minutes of rest, and then you got Oleg coming straight off of that fight right into the finals.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a little weird setup.
Yeah, I mean, Oleg was not barely standing, but he was rough after 20 minutes of fighting Hua.
Yeah.
In a close fight, which theoretically could have gone to either guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan came out and just kind of fucked him up
Yeah.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about the most one-sided fight. This could be kind of close to that.
This was pretty close to it. This one was a lot more brutal because Oleg was going for things. He wasn't just defending.
Exactly, yeah. And the headbutts. For some reason, Dan didn't headbutt Tank. Maybe he thought he would lose that battle.
Yeah.
But he was headbutting the life out of Oleg.
Yeah.
I mean...
And they were short, super in tight headbutts. They weren't like, he wasn't like lifting up and dropping. He was just in his face, just dropping.
I mean, there was one point where he had his hand on his like neck and his face, pushing him down while he just headbutted him over and over. That's crazy.
God, yeah, this fight was brutal.
Oleg looked absolutely rearranged after this fight. He was like a walking zombie, but he still like pushed the pace.
Still was dropping down for those leg locks. Still in the final 3 minutes, it did go into sudden death or sudden overtime or whatever. Oleg was still trying to. It's hard to say that he was swinging for the fences because considering a modern UFC fight, he threw literally maybe 17 punches the whole fight.
Right.
Of a 33-minute fight.
Yeah. But Dan was throwing these open palm slaps.
Oh, dude, that's how the fight opened up. Was Dan was, dude. Nate Diaz, eat your heart out.
Yeah, for real.
Dan Severn was slapping the fuck out of Oleg Taktarov, slapping him from every direction. He was even slapping down, like slapping the top of his head.
I think he didn't want to break his hand or hurt his hand.
For sure, because you got to remember they don't have gloves.
Right.
They can if they want, but they don't. One-sided beatdown. Dan was just too big. He was just on top of Oleg. At one point in time, early in the fight, you can tell Oleg really went for it because Oleg dropped down, really nice drop down for this heel hook and almost had it, but Dan scrambled out. Dan was just too big, too fast. Dan is an athlete. Dan does have good cardio. Dan is massive. He's strong and he's quick. He just scrambled out of stuff and wound up in top position too many times and just was ground and pounding him. And that is very simply it, other than the one moment where Oleg literally climbed up the fence and Dan and looked like you said, he was trying to jump out of the fucking fence. And Dan was like pulling him back in. And at one point, like that was really, Oleg had like what was that? Oleg had like 2 or 3 moments of what looked like very strong attempts at survival, and that was it.
Props to Oleg, man. He could have gave up at any point in this fight, continued on.
And the opposite of props to his fucking corner.
Dude, yeah, he was like, he's gonna die in there or whatever.
They were. I sincerely. I'm not even just saying this. I'm serious about this. I think his corner would have let him die. Think about it, dude. At what point in time? Like, at what point in time was he even remotely defending himself?
No, he wasn't. I'm telling you, he like after they stood it up for sudden death, his face looked rearranged. Like he looked like a zombie of a person.
Yeah.
Like
I guess there were a few moments where Big John brought Oleg to the doctor to check him out, and I guess the doctor, frankly, there was no cut. There was nothing, other than the fact that Oleg's blue eyes turned fucking black.
dude, he looked spaced out.
He was out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was it, man. UFC 7.5 Ultimate. An unimpressive showing from Tank Abbott outside of his first fight, and the champion is once again Dan the Beast Severn.
Very impressive. Very impressive showing from Dan Severn.
Yeah, he's an athlete. He's a big guy. Most impressively, it wasn't just his size, because he absolutely mauled Paul Verlins, who is much bigger than him. Yeah, you want to get into awards?
Let's do awards.
All right. What do we got? Let's see.
Fight of the night. I didn't really think about these awards, so I'm just kind of like freestyling it here. Fight of the night.
I know exactly what fight of the night is, because we both talked about it and said it was our favorite fight. But there was no like standout banger. It was almost like the sport's modernizing. People are being a little bit more careful. It's
Was it Hua versus Keith Hackney?
yeah, Hua and Hackney.
I would give that fight of the night too.
Yeah, just because it was interesting, a little bit of everything. And now that said, this was not a boring night necessarily. It felt like an important night moving forward, but there was no one fight that stood out as like, wow, that was a fucking banger. It was either super one-sided shit, super like waiting out, feeling each other out type of stuff, which, dude, we love this sport. So that shit hits. I don't know if I'm speaking for both of us, but I like that.
Like what?
Like, I like the feeling out. I like seeing guys thinking in there.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
And even if it gets a little bit boring, I'm okay with that. What I don't like is guys laying on top of each other. Like, I can watch scrambles on the ground. I can watch guys like fainting for an entire round.
Yeah.
So that's why I would go Keith Hackney and Mauricio Shogun, Hua's cousin, Marco Huas, for fight of the night.
Submission of the night?
I have Tank Abbott's submission of the night.
The neck crank with his head?
Yeah.
I totally agree. That's some crazy shit, dude.
Dude, if there's one, you know what? This is one where I almost is like a standalone. Like, if you get an opportunity and you want to see some like really weird early UFC shit, look at Tank Abbott's neck crank submission victory over Steve Jenham. It's weird, and it just is brutal, and it is just the stuff that this early UFC is made of.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you're looking at it like, is this purposeful? And then it is. Like, he really just slammed his head into this guy's like own head and twisted it.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's insane shit.
Dude, Tank Abbott is a psychopath.
Agreed.
Even losing, he was kind of like grinning on the way out. What else we got? Knockout
it would be
of the night?
fight of the. Oh yeah, there is no knockout of the night. Guys are just like, they don't really know how to fight back.
They don't know how to strike.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Yeah, it's like kill or be killed. I feel like
it really is.
It's just like either you're getting fucked up or you're fucking somebody else up. There's not a lot of like wars back and forth.
Very few sweeps.
Yeah.
Very few, like, if you start winning, you're probably going to win. Mm-hmm. You don't see a lot of momentum turning. So, anyway, that's just kind of the takeaways from where we are in the fight so far.
Yeah. Speaking of momentum turning, any changes to your top five?
Ken Shamrock is the man.
Yeah, 100%.
That's who the man
100%.
is Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
Because right now, UFC 7.5, Ultimate, the winner is Dan Severn, and guess who beat Dan Severn last time? not with the element of surprise, not on a fluke. It was Ken Shamrock. He outskilled him.
Yep, 100%. Ken's my number one.
Ken is the number one fighter on earth right now. Again, I don't know what's going on in Japan. I'm talking about UFC December of 1995.
Yeah.
No changes for me.
Dan number two.
Dan number two, maybe Hoyce is number three. I don't know. I mean, Igor, what's his name? Oleg lost so bad that you almost got to take him out of the equation.
Interesting.
I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah.
No changes for me on the pound for pound list.
I agree. Ken's still the man. Dan's still the man. Yeah. I really thought Tank Abbott would be entering that, but nah. He ran into Dan, bro.
Cool.
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. This has been UFC 8.
All right, guys. This has been another episode of Casual Academy. Pretty moving one here at the Ultimate to end 1995. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor. Get on the social channels, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, X, all of the places, and you can find us at Casual Academy. Join the conversation. We're having a lot of fun down here. If you want to join us for the fights, we highly recommend that you check out UFC Fight Pass. It's got all the fights back to UFC 1. We're going to be digging into Pride, WEC, and Strikeforce later on, but tonight was the Ultimate. Thanks for joining, and we will see you guys next time.
Peace.
Cool.
That's pretty good.
That was good, man. That was a good kind of low key.